The minutes of the last meeting, pages 5 to 9. Are we happy to approve as a correct record?
Move them, Chair.
Madam Chair. Yeah, happy with those, thank you. Item 4, the medium-term financial plan, 10 to 31. That's over to you, Kelly.
Today, I'm presenting the medium-term financial plan for the current year's budget, along with the original budget for 24-25, and the planning budgets for the following 3 years, 27 to 28. There are no major changes in the current budget. We are still on track to identify the remaining savings of £331,000 and will report progress in the Q3 monitoring next month. We'll start with the general fund. For the 24-25 budget, the main points to note are: the draft financial settlement was released on the 18th of December. It was for 2 years it was year 2 of a 2-year settlement. New homes bonus was paid again for a final year, and the 3% funding guarantee was also included again. Table 1 shows the grants awarded, totaling 990,000. The funding reforms have again been delayed and will not be considered now until after the general election. So it is widely expected that 25-26 will be a further rollover budget, and our forecasts reflect this. Table 2 shows the forecast position for the next 4 years, 2025. The gap before any council tax increase is 302,000. The resilience reserve will be utilised to fund this budget, but we are confident that these savings will be achieved during the year. The council tax increase of 2.99% is recommended for 2024-25. Table 2 demonstrates how important the council tax is to us, providing 40% of the annual income to the general fund. It is also very important to note that the annual increases not only services the current year's budget, but also increases the base for future years. Our commitment to robust financial management is helping us maintain this strong position, with the budget's cash limited wherever possible. The main growth item each year is pay. 2.3 million has been added for 23-24 and 24-25. There is a lot of uncertainty from 26 to 27, but assuming funding reforms take place, then budget pressures begin to mount as a result. Changes to the funding methodology, loss of government grants, and the business rate reset will all have significant detrimental impacts on us. The DLUHC have committed to transitional relief payments for the first 2 years of reforms, and we have included this in our estimates. Whilst they don't mitigate the loss entirely, they provide time for us to adjust. The 151 officer has provided a view on the adequacy of our reserves in the MTFP and has no concerns at this time. The resilience reserve will continue to provide protection against the budget gaps. The ITS reserve remains at a healthy level, and the general fund balance remains intact at 2 million, or 11% of net budget. Onto the HRA. The main points of note is the pressure being created by increased demand and the impact of regulation. Officers at the council and Racknell Homes are working closely together to continue to provide high quality housing service for our tenants, but also meet expectations for the social housing regulator. But the associated costs of delivery are growing. The additional costs known to us at this time have been included in the budget, and Recknold's management fee and the position will be kept under review. Having taken into consideration the budget pressures, the impact on tenants and the rent standards, which allows rent increases up to 7.7%, the annual rent increase we are recommending to council this year is 6%. Finally, onto the capital programme. Main points are to note that the majority of the town deal projects will be completed in 24-25, after which the general fund capital programme reduces considerably. As well as the 57 million investment in our stock over the next 4 years, the HRA capital programme also includes new build schemes at North Wingfield and the regeneration scheme at Stonebroom. So in summary, we recognise that we are in a better financial position than many local authorities, some of whom are struggling to set a balanced budget next year. But nonetheless, we do appreciate that with still time, still need to continue to tackle the underlying forecast budget deficit in a planned and managed manner. I'm happy to take any questions and move the recommendations in 1 to 14 in the report, Chair.
Any questions? Any comments?
No, just a quick one. There was an announcement yesterday by government about giving more.
There is.
How's that going to affect us? And
I'll defer that one to Jane, but not much as I'm summarising.
Right. So the government did announce rather late that they were going to make some changes to the funding settlement. It won't be confirmed until early February what that will actually look like for individual authorities, but we've done some calculations based on what we expect it to be. Most of it's going to social care, so most of it's going to the upper tiers. Rightly so, I think that's what the real pressures are. There's some additional rural services grant, which is rural districts, which we don't apply for. The one that affects us is they're moving the 3% funding guarantee, which is a one-off grant that they brought in last year as part of the current settlement package. They're adjusting that from 3% to 4%. That's going to make us £92,000. So it does have the benefit of, if this budget's approved at council on Monday, the 24-25 shortfall is 300,000. The council tax, that brings it down to 100,000. With the 92 from the funding settlement, we're pretty much at a balanced budget for 24-25.
thank you.
Yeah, I must admit, I heard that on the way in. Thought we weren't going to get much. It was mainly the county councils. I thought, when I was told the figure that we're expecting, I thought, well, we've balanced the budget this year.
Correct.
I think I've been on a Zoom call this morning with all leaders nationally, and like you say, it does help the social services stuff. But I think bottom line is it's a one-off thing. It's not going into base budget. So next year they'll take that away again, and it'll probably come in after everybody set the budgets anyway, won't it? So it's just a windfall basically for this year, and basically it don't tell many districts and ones really.
That sums it up perfectly. It is just a windfall. It's a one-off. We've not even got any guarantees that the 3% funding guarantee will be next. Assuming it will, because we're assuming next year's a rollover.
Thank you, Joe.
There are some caveats in it as well, aren't there, Jane? Do they,
Oh yeah,
they affect us? How do they?
Yeah, I don't think they'll affect us financially, but there's a nice little paragraph at the end of the press announcement, and I know no more than you do because we've not received anything at all from DLUC yet. We've literally just seen the minister's announcement talking about wanting information about efficiencies and reserves again. So we'll be providing that information when DLUC request it later in the year.
Thank you.
Lewis for all.
So mainly today it's that we agree this to go to full council on Monday. Is that what we?
Yeah, can I just make one point for the minutes more than anything? So I do apologise for this, but at 1.29, the planned contribution for the 24-25 budget, that figure is actually incorrect. Councillor Kerry read the right figure out, which was 303,000. So The call on reserves is significantly less than is mentioned at 1.29. I have corrected that in the report that's gone to council. I just wanted to make you aware of that tonight. So my apologies. Either side. It doesn't affect any of the overall numbers. It just changes that.
In the full report, it's 1.29.
Correct.
Stay away for it.
At 1.29, the third line just says the planned contribution to 24-25 budget of 970,000, 0.79 million.
Yeah.
That should be 303,000, which is the figure that Cass.
Oh, 600,000 there. Yeah.
It's last year's figure.
Glad we changed.
If you want a good news story, last year's
Well
figures
done.
improved to 300,000, but I shouldn't have got it wrong in the report in the first place. I
No,
just went up
that-
and put it on this. So,
I know you mentioned it today, you know.
yeah.
No worries, it's all right, we're all right. So the recommendations, and I've lost it now, you've gone.
Recommendations in 1 to 14.
Oh, I got you. There you are. I'm doing what I do account. So we're happy, are we all in favour of those recommendations that are in the report to go to council, yeah?
Yes. Move it, Chair.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
When it's full council, they'll have to go in 2 sections.
Yeah.
1 to 8 will go first,
general fund.
and then we have to do the housing revenue account.
Yeah.
Because we have to, some people that are tied up with Ricknold have to leave at that time. So, you know, we take the 9 to 14 while they're out.
Oh, thank you.
Chair,
Yeah,
just to remind you, at that point, you will have to elect a chair for the meeting of
Okay.
council as well.
yeah, of course, the chair and vice chair will both leave on. We've not thought that through.
And anybody with outstanding debt on the rent account that live in a rented property could declare an interest. I don't know now, we used to have to go through it because there was about 2 councillors regularly, but that's a long time ago.
Through you, Chair, we have that information ready for the meeting if we need it, but there's.
I don't think it probably occurs now, but for a long time we had a couple that.
Okay, thank you. The publication of the first biodiversity net gain report. I'm looking forward to this one. Steve.
Oh.
Wake up.
When you said looking forward to it, I thought you were going to come with some.
No, I love biodiversity.
I'm glad you do, because it's part of our greener, the cleaner, greener, safer. And it's something that we've all been committed to. Not only that, it is a statutory requirement. David will tell us more about it in a minute. And as part of that statutory requirement, we have to produce a statement on what we're planning to do, what we're going to do, and what our current position is. Obviously, I've seen this before. It needs to be done publicly. I've agreed this earlier on in the month. So do you want to give a bit more information on that, David?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, councillors. Yeah, so the reason for this report basically set out in the 2021 Environment Act, which basically expanded on a previous duty around biodiversity. And in the 2021 Act, there is a specific responsibility on public bodies, clearly this council is one of those, to conserve and enhance biodiversity and to demonstrate how we're doing that. So the purpose of the report is essentially to do that, to cover the activities that we've undertaken in the last year, and then set out a set of actions which they're our first consideration. So effectively the 7 actions that are in the report in part 2 are essentially summarise the activity we've undertaken in the last calendar year. We've been working with Derbyshire Wildlife Trust on those, and we do currently have a service level agreement with the Wildlife Trust to provide us with, at the moment, predominantly comments on planning applications where there's biodiversity net gain assessments. This whole area of net gain is expanding in terms of the requirements on developers, because as of the 12th of February, it's now been agreed that there will be a legal requirement on developers to produce a 10% net gain on major development sites. So that's sites of 10 dwellings or more, or 1,000 square metres or more if it's clearly not residential. So in those cases, developers have a specific duty, and the Wildlife Trust are in place to help us deal with that. There would be a procurement exercise to go through in terms of the 7 actions, because that's obviously a much more detailed report, and it relates to work that we as a council are doing, not developers. So it is a separate element, but we will be going through that procurement exercise, and I think it's to come back to Cabinet in terms of a kind of the detailed action plan. So part 2 sets out the actions. Part 3 of the report is a broad action plan and kind of attributes a year over 1 to 5. This is a 5-year plan, and clearly each element will require quite a lot of work and meat on the bone. So happy to come back to Cabinet in the future regarding those. But essentially, the recommendation is to approve the publication of this report on the council's website. It is a requirement, but obviously it's something brought here because it requires kind of organisational buy-in, and I think an awful lot of positive work goes on in this regard, and there's a lot more work to do. It fits in with a review of our council assets and various things that measures that will need to be undertaken as part of local plan review. So this will run through an awful lot of work that we're doing. So at the moment it's publication of this report, but it's nice and we'll come back, no doubt. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. We sort of alluded to a bit yesterday, didn't we, in the strategy for looking at some of our land. But I'm just looking at this wild planting policy, which I didn't sort of tweak till just reading it. But that's something we can definitely look at, isn't it, David? Like, that we've got lots of land where we can develop using rather than just pouring buildings.
Yes, Chair, I think you're absolutely right with that. And I mean, since last May, it's a conversation I've been having with Street Scene, looking at where we can develop wildflower planting, and have a mixture of some of our traditional beds, which serve the district quite well. It makes us look a nice place, and have wild planting in that. And as David said, we've got pieces of land ultimately, potentially, that aren't being used for anything that we could develop. And when this is public, hopefully it might interest some of our residents as well who want to make comments or be involved in suggestions about that. I mean, I think that'd be quite a nice thing to do. It's a good opportunity to really look at how we do make the district greener, as well as bringing builders and developers on site as well, and encouraging them to take that biodiversity agenda.
Yeah.
I'm happy to move the recommendation, Chair, with that.
Thank you. I'll second that. Are we all in favour?
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave. That's great. Item 6, delegating authority to officers to enter into planning performance agreement with developers. You want that one, Steve?
This me again. Yes, it's. I mean, planning performance agreements are a tool that are used, but it encourages developers to have contact with us, and to start that process off rather than do things cold. It can save money in the long run, and perhaps David wants to elaborate on that, if you would, please.
Yeah, that's fine, Councillor. Thank you. There are powers delegated to officers to introduce new charges effectively to services, but I think given the potential take up of these, which might be quite significant on our larger scale projects once we introduce it, and also the kind of public interest element we thought it's best to come to Cabinet to have this discussion. But the purpose of planning performance agreements is effectively to give developers certainty in terms of the timescale for delivery of a project. And as Councillor Pickering has just said, it tends to start with pre-application advice engagement, but would also cover the processing of a planning application with the sole purpose of recovering the cost to the authority of dealing with that application. So this is not an income generating measure, it's a cost recovery measure.
Yeah.
And that needs to be very clear. And there's an Appendix 1 to the report is a draft guidance note which I produced, which would go on the website if we make a decision to endorse planning performance agreements. Is perhaps a bit of a strong word. I mean, in the end, it's a voluntary arrangement where we've had a couple of developers express an interest in going down this route. And there's one draft agreement in place at the moment, which we would pursue should Cabinet make the decision to endorse this general approach today. But the guidance note effectively explains what planning performance agreements are. Talks about those things that they're not. You know, this is in no way a guarantee of the outcome for a planning application. And it is not an exercise in gaining money over the costs to application. The cost exercise, which has to be gone through, is rigorous. It would be based on an officer hourly rate, and the scope of each planning performance agreement will inevitably be different because they're specific to a project. But it would only be ever a case of agree with the developer how much time officers will be involved in the project, and then a clear link to actually charging. So there would be a clear audit trail. And the guidance also goes into effectively how we would administer them as a planning department in terms of what an applicant can reasonably expect as part of that process. So nothing else to add at this point, Chair, but
Thank you.
answer any questions.
Are there any questions? David or Steve?
No, Chair, I mean, I think David's,
Yeah.
someone that, the only the worry that we initially had was that it might be seen incorrectly as having some favouritism or having some influence on an outcome of a decision. It clearly doesn't do that. It doesn't no way negate the planning committee or anything else that's taking place. And the public statement, I think, makes that in David's that is put on the website, it makes that quite clear.
Yeah.
That is not the case. So I think it's a benefit to us. I'm quite happy to move the recommendation, Chair, at point 1.
Good, I'll second that. Are we all in favour of the recommendations? What, 1 and 2? I think? Yeah. Thank you. Urgent items. I've not had any urgent items. Anybody? No. Exclusion of the public then. The leader to move, and I always like reading this out. The public being excluded from the meeting during the discussion of the following items of business to avoid disclosure to them of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, as amended by the Local Government Access to Information Variation Order 2006. The category of exempt information is stated after each item. Did I do that all right, Alan?
Yeah, are members content?
Not really, but
Thank you.
Right, Martin, can you confirm the stream's ended?
Just like a recording of that.
Hello, Martin, can you hear you? I think we just work on the assumption it has ended, Chair.
We assumed. Right, thank you. Item 9 then, purchase of 15 units for affordable rent at
So
outside.
we'll log on to YouTube and have a look.
Yeah, go and have a look.
I can't.
We just press mic and camera off.
Yeah.